So, while An Unearthly Child was the first Doctor Who episode ever, the second story is where things really took off. Because, of course, An Unearthly Child had problems getting off the ground, having to rework the pilot episode to get it the way they wanted it, and also having to deal with the death of Kennedy, meaning not many people watched it first time around. The Daleks, though, is when people started to look up, to notice, and really take notice. The Doctor, Ian, Barbara, and Susan end up on a mysterious planet in the middle of a petrified forest. The only thing that can be seen in the distance is a mysterious metal city. The Doctor is kind of anxious to investigate the city, but his friends are just like, maybe we should get out of here. But he manages to manipulate them into checking out the city, where we come face to face with those oh so classic monsters, the Daleks, for the very first time. And what's unusual about that is that other people who have... I may have done my pick of the New Who timeline, but people who have done the whole of Doctor Who, the classic Doctor Who, state that this is actually the latest point for the Daleks. They're on the point of extinction. We're introduced to the Daleks and the Thals. The Daleks, murderous mutant creatures sealed inside metal casings, and the Thals, kind of humanoid creatures who have kind of evolved over the years back into kind of humanoid form and are just kind of trying to survive. They're pacifists. They don't want to fight the Daleks, even if they know there's no alternative. But Ian does eventually find a way that they do want to protect the ones they love and will do anything to do it. I mean, the Thals are kind of great kind of contrast with the Daleks. You got ones such as Tamosis, Aladon, Ganatus, Antidus, Dione, and Elion. And what's very sad about it is that we know that by the end of the story, not all of them are going to make it out alive. But the thing that we're all here for is the Daleks. The very first time they appeared in the Doctor Who. And it's pretty good to see. Like An Unearthly Child, this feels like a piece of history. This feels like a grand event. And over the 7 parts of it, they are shown to be a legitimate threat. I mean, they're a little bit more kind of dulled down than they would later become. For example, they talk a lot more like humans kind of talk today. I mean, in the era of New Who, the Daleks do kind of tend to use kind of a more advanced vocabulary. For example, they may say things like affirmative or negative, whereas in this one they say more things like yes or no. Which, yeah, I mean, this was still the very first Dalek story, but over the 7 parts of it, the Dead Planet, the Survivors, the Escape, the Ambush, the Expedition, the Ordeal, and the Rescue, they're still those kind of classic creatures. I mean, the one moment in the entire thing that I admit was maybe a little kind of cheeky and a little kind of funny, and did suck me out of it a little, was, I think, a part in, I believe it was in part 2, The Survivors, in which the Doctor, Barbara, Ian, and Susan, they managed to kind of capture a Dalek, remove the mutant from it, and in order to get them out of the cell, Ian kind of gets inside the Dalek and puts on a silly voice, which I admit did make me chuckle slightly. I did find it slightly funny, so maybe that took me out of it slightly. But once again, it's a very good story. I mean, I am beginning to warm to the style of Doctor Who that was the 60s through to the 80s, which is, well, in New Who these days it's more 45 minutes and a complete story. This time, the story is spread over kind of multiple episodes, and each episode is about 20 to 25 minutes long, and you know what? It works. I mean, I doubt it would work if you tried to do that same thing nowadays, because we're kind of a bit more streamlined nowadays, but kind of for the time period, this was actually pretty good. I mean, maybe 45 minutes at staring at just black and white for the entire time, that might have been a little bit stretching, but you know what? 20 minutes black and white and a mini adventure? It works. Across all 7 parts, it works. And the Daleks would later go on to become one of the most classic villains or monsters in Doctor Who history. This was their very first appearance, and it set up a lot. It's also worth noting that the kind of big man at the time, Cindy Newman, he apparently wasn't originally keen on this idea, because when he had kind of agreed to set up Doctor Who, he did it under the understanding of that he didn't necessarily want to go to the kind of sci-fi cliche of bug-eyed monsters. But yet they managed to create a bug-eyed monster and do it well here. I mean, once again, the Daleks, they're a little rough around the edges, but they are still the iconic creatures that would go on to define a generation. That's the Daleks. Their very first appearance, and you know what? It's pretty good. Anyway, next one on my roster, The Edge of Destruction. Until then, see ya.